So now that I've got my image transferred onto my slab, I'm going to go ahead and start carving. Now these are the carving tools that we have. They come in a variety of different tips. And a flat one, broad flat one like this, and a knife blade looking one like this are probably going to be the most popular. But the thing is, don't stash them. Come on, because everybody wants to use them. And if you stash them in your box and we can't find any, guess what? We're going to rummage through your box, through your clay, through your projects, looking for carving tools. So don't stash them in the first place. Don't hide them around the room. Nothing, right? You want to have them available for everybody. The other thing is that don't leave these soaking in water, and because these things, I end up replacing a bunch of them every year, and the thing is that they could last a good long time, but what happens is that people will leave them just soaking. Yeah, throw them in there, throw them in the sink, throw them wherever, right? And what happens is that the wood will absorb the water, it will expand a little bit, and then it will make this ferrule loose. And it will loosen up any glue that's holding that together as well. And so that's how the tips comes loose and then they come out. So keep them dry, keep them nice, keep them available for everyone. And even though these are going to be the most popular tips, all the tips are very useful. This one, for instance, has a curve to it, and it's a very useful tool to use. Okay, so curve. Okay, so anywho, how would I go about starting this? The first thing that I would do is make sure that my drawing was sort of securely in there, right? And so I'm going to go around maybe and do just a little bit engraving around some of my edges just to make sure that even if I lose the drawing, the clay itself is marked. All right, so that's more or less permanent. And once again, when the clay is really soft, this is a little bit difficult. When it's really all the way sort of that white dry, that greenware, then it's also a little difficult, but not too bad. But when it's really soft, that's when it's a little bit hard. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm establishing this area. And this area was all number 3. Remember how I had 1, 2, 3 in depth, different layers. And then what I'll do is I'll take something like this flat tool, or maybe a broad curved tool like this would work just as well as that. And I'm going to start just sort of scraping some out. Now notice I'm going to hold my tool sort of flat, at a flat level, and work it, control, right? So here we go, just sort of taking that out. And you don't have to go super deep. You really don't. If you want to see a nice example of relief carving, just go grab a penny or a quarter or any coin and see how flat that is, but yet see how much detail they get out of that. Okay, so I'm leaving that border. Hopefully you're starting to see now why we would have a border and how that's going to keep this slab nice and strong. Okay, so I'm establishing my level now, how deep I'm getting it. And if you notice, I'm not going super deep. That's the thing that the kids do the most wrong, right? Is that they make things way too deep, and they carve right through it. But then again, that's why we're doing this project first before we get into more intimate or intricate, I should say, not intimate, intricate projects. Okay, so here you can see where I've got this piece, and this piece here is just a little bit big, right? So maybe one of these other tools is going to come in very handy now for getting that out. There. And so you see I'm holding the tool right here, right? And so that way I'm keeping it at a level. You know, imagine that this hand is the table, holding that there and keeping that at a level. That's how you keep from going too deep. Because if you just come in like this, well then there's really no control. There's no limit as to how deep you might go. But with this, I can just establish my level, and I can get that very flat, as you can see right there. Okay, so here you can see I've taken all the deepest parts down a little bit, so all the parts that I refer to as a number 1. So that's layer 1. And as you can see too, hopefully, really not that deep. Not that deep. It doesn't need to be. Okay. So now, some of these areas were a little bit tight. Remember I said, oh yeah, this tool here is going to be very popular. But remember, these little tools here have their purpose too. So here I can get into this area that's very tight. It's this little tool. And just clean it out, just so. So now I'm going to start carving layer number 2. So we don't want it to go down as deep as number 1, but we do want it to be sort of different than layer number 3 right here. So we've got that. So I'll just make it about halfway in between. You know, it really doesn't take much of a difference in a layer for the eye to pick it up. Clean that out a little bit. Okay, and sometimes little scrubbly things that are hard to get to, you know, if you just let that clay dry a little bit, when it's all dry, you'll be able to come back in and get little details, no problem. So I got that. It's just it's a little bit lower than the third layer, but a little bit lower or higher than the first layer right here. Sort of nice and in between. Okay, so now we've got layers 1 and layers 2 carved out. And as you can see, we have not gone very deep into the slab, and yet you can very clearly define one layer from another from another. Okay. Now here, right here, sort of is a special problem here. So I said, okay, I've got one layer, and that's probably going to be white. Another layer, that would probably be red. Another layer, blue. But what do I do about this right here? So here's red, and if here's red, then those are just going to blend in. That's not going to look right. I think what I'll do is I'll make this part gold. So we've got white, red, blue, and gold just in this little part here. And I'll also make it a separate layer. So remember, you can make these layers very, very thin, and yet they will still stand out. You'll still see them. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to carve this part here. Okay, so now I have 3 and, well, maybe 3.5 layers here. So 1, 2, 3, and sort of this half layer in between here. You'll see it's very thin, but you can see it. I'm not going to stop there. I'm going to let this firm up just a little bit, not get totally white, dry, but a little bit firmer than what it is right now. Maybe it's just a question of leaving it in my box overnight or a couple of days until I have class again. And then I'm going to do a little bit more detail carving into it and show you how to undercut so that we can really bring out the three-dimensionality here and maybe even round the helmet a little bit, or at least give it that sense of being round.